Greetings, travelers. Welcome back to Lesson 2 of the Guns of Icarus Flight School. Once again, my name is Quintessence, and today we're going to go ahead and start by talking about the engineering class. Some of the specifics, we'll look at the different tools, and then we'll go into a practice game, and we'll go through some of the different elements to help hopefully make you a good engineer coming out the gate. So to go ahead and start, I'm going to have you click on right here, this little crescent wrench. That is within the class section. This is your engineer class. This tells the system that, hey, you want to be an engineer today. And for right now, let's go ahead and go over to the character section. We'll jump in, which will bring us to our loadout. I'm not going to go into details with the appearance. You can find that in the basic Lesson 1 tutorial. But we'll go ahead and start over here with the different loadouts. For the instance of this, in piloting equipment, there's a whole lot of arguments that could probably be made if your pilot DCs about taking one of these others. But for me personally, I always go the spyglass. It's a really great tool. You can help spot other enemy ships, which is really important. And I just enjoy having that kind of ability and that kind of addition to help my team out. Now when looking at the engineering equipment, let's go through the different items really quick. To start with, we'll talk about the rebuilding items, and then we can look at the fire and flame extinguisher, the fire extinguisher and chemical spray, and then we'll talk about the Dynabuff tool. So to begin with, the spanner. This, as it will tell you in the basic tutorial that the Guns of Icarus offers you, the spanner is best for rebuilding, and it is the worst at repairing. And you can see those details right down on the bottom of the little box that comes up. The 2-second repair cooldown. Cooldowns are really important. When something is on cooldown, you are unable to do anything else. Now this is different than rebuild, and I'll go ahead and show you guys the difference later when we're in the game. The next tool up is actually the pipe wrench. The nice thing about the pipe wrench is that you can rebuild and repair decently. It's just not great or the best at both, as it were. And you can tell that the 5-second repair cooldown is a little bit longer, but it does repair more health, 120 compared to the spanner's only 40. And then because I don't have it up here, the rubber mallet is the other one. The rubber mallet has the longest cooldown, but it does repair the most damage, but it's also the worst at rebuilding. Now me personally, I often like starting with the spanner and the rubber mallet, and most loadouts I feel like that's the best way you can go. Some people might take the wrench if they're going to change some of their other items, but most often you'll see either the captain or the gunner take the wrench. Sometimes otherwise, but there's a case-by-case basis to be made for all of them, and in my other tutorials regarding the gunner and the pilot, I can talk about those scenarios a little bit more. So let's look at the fire extinguisher and the chemical spray. I'll go ahead and look at the fire extinguisher first. The important thing to note about the fire extinguisher, and the thing that often comes up, is what is the big difference. The important thing with the fire extinguisher is that it put out fire immediately. Obviously, if something's on cooldown, you can't act on it at all, but once it's out of cooldown, the fire extinguisher tool actually has 20 extinguish power. So when we get into the game and start looking at it, you'll see a little flame icon and a counter on it that tells you how much extinguish power you're going to need to remove that fire. The fire extinguisher has the highest at 20 extinguishing power, and it makes the location or the object that you are extinguishing fire from immune to fire for 3 seconds, and it's got a 3-second cooldown. Now the chem spray, however, the chem spray is used mainly to protect your equipment from starting on fire. As you can tell from the little tooltip, it actually is immune to fire for 25 seconds. But if you were trying to put fire out with it, whereas the fire extinguisher has 20 extinguishing power, this only has 3 extinguishing power. So on those bigger flames, it's going to take a little bit to go ahead and put out. And the cooldown is slightly longer with the chemical spray at 5 seconds. The final item we're going to look at is actually the Dynabuff kit, which is this little pickaxe looking thing. You can buff all the different equipment, and you can see in the description of the tool what each buff does. The engines, when you buff them, they last for 2 minutes, and it's 3 seconds to buff them, which is relatively 3 hits. Guns, get more power or more damage. Excuse me, the engines also have more power. The guns, once again, it's 6 seconds to buff them, and it lasts for 20 seconds, but it does, like I said, increase their damage by 20%. The hull, it takes 10 seconds, and it lasts for 2 minutes, and it increases your armor for 30%. Balloons is 7 seconds to complete, 90 seconds is how long it lasts, and it reduces drag and gives you better lift force, which means you'll raise and lower a little bit better. Situational, most crew comps will have 2 engineers and 1 gunner. You might occasionally find instance where someone will take 3 engineers. It all kind of depends on the ship and what the captain wants, and hopefully, depending on the captains, you won't see this so much early on, but the captains can actually create loadouts for you, and they'll suggest them to you when you're in the match lobby. Personally, I always suggest, unless you really have a doubt or a question about what they're suggesting, go ahead and take their loadout, because ideally they've built those loadouts around that specific ship type, and they've worked with them a little bit, and they have a really good idea of what works best on that ship. There's maybe an argument to be made, and I would say go ahead and make that discussion with the captain and the pilot when you go ahead and talk with them, just in the lobby. Be like, hey, why this rather than this? But most of the times you won't run into that. In a situation where you're on the right ship type and you feel like you're going to be doing a lot of buffing, you'll see a lot of people do this on maybe the Junker if they're in charge of the engines and the balloon. They'll go ahead and take... I've seen this loadout. I think I might have a preset for it. Nope, I only change ammos on that. Where they'll do something like this, where they have the pipe wrench, which allows them to repair and rebuild. They'll have the chem spray to make sure nothing starts on fire, and then they'll go ahead and put the dynabuff on there so that they can buff everything as well. You'll also sometimes see gunners, instead of taking your wrench, they'll take the buff just so they can get that extra 20% damage on their guns. But if you're going to take the buff, go ahead and run it past the captain first, is always my advice. And just say, hey, is it cool if I take this? I won't often run this loadout that you're looking at right here. Usually, if I know that I've got somebody, I still prefer to take the spanner and the mallet. But it's very much personal preference, and the best thing you can do is get into some of the practices and run around, or get into other matches and run around, and just try everything out and get a feel for it. One quick note, when you start out the game, all of the engineering loadouts actually have the mallet come before the spanner. Personally, I'm not sure why that is. I like using the mallet as my second, and this way it ramps up from repairing to rebuilding, and especially because I often run the fire extinguisher, I can swap between my repairing tools more conveniently rather than going through the third. You can change what item you're using with your mouse wheel, so it's not really a big deal, but it's just what I do and it's how I think about it. But obviously you have complete autonomy into how you want to set everything up. The final thing to look at is actually gunnery equipment. Most engineers that I've seen actually end up taking the Lesmach rounds, which just gives you a better, the 70% projectile speed, means it's just a farther distance that you can hit. I'm not going to get into this very much. I'll talk about the different ammos more in the gunnery training. But a lot of people will take Lesmach. I see some people will request burst for the extra damage, or charged for the extra damage. It's going to be completely up to what some people's preference are, but if you know your weapons and you've done your gunnery, just look at the ship in the lobby and you can probably make a pretty informed decision off that. So I'll go ahead and I'll save changes just for this because I was back on my regular items. That's the general of the tools and the loadouts and setting your loadouts. And we'll go ahead and go to the practice. I'll start with the 1v1. Once again, this is the lobby. If you're really looking to just kind of get a feel for the engineer, do exactly what I did, which is go to practice, go to 1 versus 0, and then it puts you in this captain spot so that you can pick the ship. I'm using a Mobula loadout for this one just because I think it's the best example right now. You probably won't see it too often, but it allows me to run around a little bit better. But then just make sure you're on the engineer. If you want to look at your loadout really quick, you can hit the little profile button and you can make any last minute changes that you want. For the sake of what we're doing, that's fine. I'll go ahead and stick with this and I'll just change it when I get there. And then go ahead and hit ready. Your match countdown will start, and then we'll go ahead and go in. Alright, and now that you are into the practice, we'll go ahead and orientate ourselves a little bit. We'll come onto this side. It populates with AIs. You can just kind of ignore them. They're not as important. Here's the important things to note. As you can see on the right side of the screen, there are these different F4, F5, F6 different utilities. F4 actually freezes all of the AIs so that they don't interact with anything. This is really great when you want to practice what you're doing. F5 will destroy and create some damage to your ship so that you can practice repairing and everything like that. F6 actually sets things on fire, and then F7, F8, F9, and F10 actually create opponents that you can shoot at. F7 is a dummy target that just sits there, F8 is a moving target, F9 is a target that will shoot you, and then F10 clears all dummies from the map. So here's what I want to talk about. Important things to look at for the very beginning. As an engineer, if you look at the left on the screen, and I'll go ahead and zoom in on that a little bit, you'll see these little icons around the screen, and you can see little bars beneath them. Now what these are is that any time a component gets damaged, these will appear for them. The two that are kind of awkwardly shifting on the left, the guns, the little cannon image means that it's a weapon. The little shield means that it's the hull, or the armor, as some people will probably call it. And then on the bottom left you can kind of see is the balloon that has taken damage. And we're going to go ahead and walk over here so that I can show you the next components that you need to know. Now when you approach an object, you'll see this little compass that appears next to where that little picture is that corresponds with what it is. And you'll see the bar beneath that. So this bar correlates with the bars that are underneath the lower icons, and that's actually the health of the object that you're looking at. Now when dealing with the circle, I'm going to call it the engineering clock. I call it this because it actually establishes the different cooldowns for your items. So as I'm using the wrench, and remember that the spanner, excuse me. Remember with the spanner, it's got the worst repair rate, but the lowest cooldown. So you'll see a really quick rotation on that clock. You can see it rotate around. That's actually the cooldown. In that time, no other action can be taken. So as I do it, you can see nothing else is happening. And then I'm going to go ahead and repair it to full. And once it's repaired to full, you'll see that you can no longer put it on cooldown because it doesn't need any actions on it, no matter what item you use. If you go ahead and extinguish it, you can see that it turns really frosty blue. That means that it's immune for the 3 seconds that we were talking about, and you saw the cooldown. Go ahead and tick off that. So for the 3 seconds, while something is icy blue like that, it can't be ignited. So if someone's flamethrowing this gun, it won't start on fire. And remember, with the chemical spray, it will actually last for 25 seconds, so that icy blue lasts a really long time. So we'll go ahead and go to this next one. And as you can see, once again, I get that engineering clock to pop up. You can see the health bar, and I'm going to go ahead and use the mallet. And as you can see, with one hit, that mallet has brought the health all the way up. But you can see the cooldown clock takes a lot longer to kind of rotate around. And as I mentioned, once something is on cooldown, you cannot take any action on it. We'll go ahead and pop over to the balloon, and I'll demonstrate this again. So it's on that really long cooldown, and as you can see, I can't turn it icy blue right now, because no action, like I mentioned. This is an example of what that cooldown actually means. And then once that cooldown's done, you saw how it popped up. And as you can see on something, even if it's not damaged or anything like that, that engineering clock will always appear when you approach. We'll go ahead and run around and repair some things. Particularly, I want to repair the hull because of what I'm going to do next. So we'll go ahead and repair the hull. Now, you can tell I walked away from that, but when I come back, it's still on cooldown. So you start getting what they call repairing circuits, which is basically the path that you run around and repair things, and you put multiple things on cooldown at the same time, so that you can keep and kind of use the least amount of time to repair items. And if you go online on the forums, as I will always put my plug out there for the forums, you'll hear a lot of people, and there's a lot of engineering guides, and you hear people talk about the parkour of the engineer. This is because what you very much need to be doing is running around the ship as much as possible repairing things when repairs are called for or when you can see that they're needed. So the best that you can do is really get used to running around on some of these ships. get orientated to how they are, run around on them, and as you can see, you can run around on a lot of things, and you obviously you can't really do flips, but you can absolutely run around on ships and everything like that. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create some more damage to the ship. Okay, now you can see, once again, this object here, you can see it's smoking really bad right now, and it's actually, the icon is turned red. And if you look on the left side of the screen, you can actually see that those have turned red as well. What this means is that a component has actually been destroyed, and it will now need to be rebuilt. Now if I walk over here, you can see that the cooldown engineering clock has turned red and the health bar is flashing. This is also the indicators that an object has been destroyed. Now if I go ahead and start with the hammer, you can see that one tick that happened, the 2 ticks, the 3 ticks. That's because when you are rebuilding, unlike repairing, you can't hit it once, put it on cooldown, and run away. Rebuilding means you have to actively use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and switch to the spanner, and as you can see, I'm actually getting bigger chunks of the pie with this, of that engineering clock. And that's because, as we mentioned before, the spanner is actually the best for rebuilding, whereas the mallet is better for repairing. So I'll go ahead and rebuild these back up. And then I'll rebuild this last one. And then I'll go ahead and give it an example of what a circuit might look like. On a Mobula, this probably isn't going to be the best example. As anyone who's played Engineer might know, you can't do a great circuit. But I'll go ahead, I'll tap that, I'll jump down, tap that. And you can tell all these icons are disappearing as I do it, and that's because they're going to be fully repaired, and I'm not going to have to worry about them anymore. So I can just keep running. Oh, I missed. Make sure you don't miss. I can run over. Please note, I'm not doing this in any kind of priority order. Guns may not necessarily be the first thing you go and top back off when an object needs it. But it could be. I mean, it all depends on the situation. If you're really close to a kill and your captain says focus on guns, then go ahead and get the guns repaired, because what he's saying to you is that in fact you're going to kill your target before they're able to finish you off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start some things on fire. I'll add another token on that. So, once again, as we mentioned, when something's put on cooldown, you can just leave it. And you can see that little flame counter on the engineering compass. That's doing constant damage, so if I don't put it out, it is going to eventually destroy it. At 4, if you remember, the chemical spray would not actually put that out in 1. You'd have to hit it twice. Now that's on cooldown. I'm going to run up. And I'm going to put multiple things out at once. So while that one's on cooldown, I'm going to run here. I can do that, and while that's on cooldown, I'll switch to the mallet, run here, get a repair tick in there, run back, and get one on there because it's no longer on cooldown. And then I've got a few more things that are on fire. And as you can see, the fire did destroy that top gun. So I'll tag that. I'm not worried about that top gun right now. We'll tag that. Little specialty parkour jump. We'll tag that so that our hole is full. Or near full, as it were, since it didn't quite finish. And then we can stay here. Now let's say we were I'm sorry about the noise in the background. As you can tell, if we were constantly getting hit in this, it might be an instance where I want the faster cooldown and I just want to constantly be at it to kind of push through their damage. It's a judgment call, and you'll actually have to start getting used to it. But it is what it is. You get used to these kinds of concepts the more you play, and whether you should be using a mallet versus a wrench, as it were. Then we'll go ahead and pull everything back to full. And you can see on the right side, that object still hasn't gone, because it's not full. So we'll wait just a minute, and we'll go ahead and tap it once. And you'll occasionally hear a pilot who's probably engineered once or twice in their time, who will say they want, at least I do, I know I've heard at least one other captain do it, hold here for a minute, where they'll say, let's go ahead and give a tap to the engines, which basically means they took some damage, go ahead and stop what you're doing, throw a little bit of health onto those, and then go ahead and leave them. The last thing that I want to mention when looking at this is that when you're when you are rebuilding, if there are multiple engineers, and this is really important on the whole, multiple people can repair at once. So if 2 people are hitting this with their spanners at the same time, it's going to get rebuilt a lot quicker, which is a really great thing. And on some ships, you'll sometimes see the captain will actually jump off and help repair something just because it needs a little bit of tick off. So with that, that's pretty much everything. I'm going to go ahead and swap kits. Alright, and now that we're back, you can see I have the wrench, the chem spray, and the Dynabuff. And then I do still have the spyglass. Of quick note, just in case anyone knew that the spyglass was there but wasn't sure how to mark targets, when you're zoomed in on something, all you have to do is left click, and it will actually bring up the little square border on them saying that you've spotted them. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and let's pop some damage onto everything. Oh, we'll jump down here. And again, you can see that the cooldown, and see all those hittings that I was doing was completely ridiculous and unneeded, but old habits, noob habits. But you can see the cooldown clock. Oh, I didn't disable AI. Oh, good job, AI. We'll go ahead and go over here. Important thing to note, and I'll try and give some examples of this at another point in time, is that you can kind of figure out special ways to hit things so that you don't have to like run all the way up there to repair the engine. You can actually hit it from the bottom, and as you can see, I caught that. And as you can see, once again, it's actually adding more health than the spanner did and a quicker cooldown than the mallet, which is very much the in-between. The reasons this isn't necessarily the best route is because it is decent at both, it's not great at both. And I very much prefer to be great at both, as much as possible anyway. So the chem spray. So as you can see, that's got a nice frosty blue look. And you can see the cooldown lasts for 5 seconds. But you can see, unlike the fire extinguisher, when this one went on cooldown, the fire extinguisher blue was gone. This one is still on there. And it will last, as I mentioned prior, for 25 seconds. And you can reapply it. It doesn't stack for like extra, it just what it is. And what's really nice is that you can actually chem spray multiple things. Kind of like the repair circuits. This is like an immunity circuit, as it were. And you can see this is still chem sprayed so that nothing can start it on fire. And you can do that from the bottom. Now let's see if I was able to keep everything chem sprayed. Looks like it. Oh. A few things dropped it. So it's very much an as you get used to it kind of thing. And so like that engine. Yeah, that engine just lost it. We were able to see. And all those such things. So next, let's go ahead and go to the Dynabuff. So on Dynabuff, you can see this little circle with a lightning bolt that encompasses the engineering clock. And as you click and hit it, as it's kind of like repairing, you're buffing it, you have to actively do it. That left bar will go ahead and slowly fill up. And then the right bar is how long that item is buffed, and you can see that timer slowly drawing down. Now, if I start repairing it, you can see it doesn't change that timer unless I get it all the way full. Then it restarts that timer. But you can't actively rebuild the timer. You can either have it restart or let it fall off. And on the balloon, you can see it takes a lot longer. And it lasts a lot longer. And buffed items will get this very nice shiny blue or shiny gold look. Here's the last thing that I want to go ahead and point out. So you can see I'm starting to buff this. And you can also tell that on the left side, that buff timer, or that buff meter, it's not really changing. It just sits there. So if you have the time, you can actually go ahead and prep a buff. So you'll notice that one's almost all the way up there. And we'll go ahead and run around and say we have a whole bunch of items prepped to be buff. And as you can tell, I didn't actually have the engineering clock, but it still went ahead and did it anyway. So you have to play around with those distances a little bit to get used to them. So let's say that I wasn't in a fight, we were slowly moving, so I'm going around and prepping everything. And we'll leave that one there. So with that in mind, I should be able to run around, run to objects, and buff that one. Say we were getting ready to enter a fight. Oh, did that not? Buff that one. Oh, that one wasn't ready. Rebuffed that one. That one's buffed. So as you can tell, you can actually pre-buff items and have that ready to go if you're going to be free at the last minute to go ahead and swap over to it and finish that buff right before you engage in combat. That way you don't have it too soon, or you're not running the cooldown for no reason or anything like that. The final thing of note, I'm going to go ahead and put some damage onto some things. Perfect. As this buff is done. So let's, oh, nope, it's not. That's okay. Really watch the engineering clock on this one. You'll see it's on cooldown, and you'll see this is the only thing you can do while it's on cooldown. You can actually during cooldown, you can buff. And as I can see, like, that's about to finish, I'll go ahead and swap to that so that I can cool it down and it won't start on fire, and then I can finish buffing it in that interim. This is a really handy little trick for this, and it's one of the reasons that you can get away with it with using the Dyna buff, is because you can keep up repairs and buff at the same time. One thing of note, not that it would make any sense, but you cannot buff a destroyed item. You'll have to rebuild it first. As I mentioned, there's not really a reason that you would try and buff something that's not active. But just, I guess, in case you wanted to start it and prep it while you were rebuilding or anything like that, that's not so much an option. So that pretty much does it for our engineering tutorial. Like I said, I think we'll look at some of the specialty parkour moves, as it were, in another training. We'll put some videos together for that. So thank you again for joining us, guys. I hope this was helpful, give you a little bit better ideas. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me in-game at Quintessence. Or you can find me on the YouTube channel, and I do live stream off of twitch.tv/Quintessence. Thanks again, and hope the friendly ammo-filled skies are always enjoyable.